Sabusiafo ebekaya enchepi ena Levy hu nsem beto odwa emra eye finance minister kopie mo parliament ede koto parliamentarians nanim say e wo so mo gisa taxes na ede tum se de be ya Ghana betimi akona nim osikasam mu ni ade no na enya besia bole nsensem mebre no enam so ma mentime ho ase ekoso parliament ema eye dom kase no that's the majority epie koi ema moto aba ama afi the majority ba back me bedane hu nsensem mebre a Ghana for bibrina entes ansem nase na emra eye papa eye ofori ata ekopie mu e parliament de nsem no kogu ho e de ma omo no na dom kuma no e ba abontin later be kire say Levy ni ko mo 1% bi no be so mo ye no kra na ko meti ase e de ama oman Ghana no enkonfo bibrina so e che say Levy ni kra e de ade potin na say Levy no e kire akofa nsensem we nyina e de aba e de potin panti na wose agisa ade no so atum e wo Ghana se yebeji sa taxes no na ediabo okuro no ho ebra no sa no manwoma no we enam so ema obinim difo bi atimi akirechirade no mu yi afa ye Levy no ho nsensem no mu mepese obenya mre na watie eye nsem a papa yi eba bekan very important na de tie ni so omuso nya abotre na omko all over Ghana regions ni nyina na se information center kra no benya omoto omobu chechire mu chi kasem eni kurukuro na omokoso ne kasem ele chire nkofo tiase because say asem papa yi be kan e wo video yi mu very important utie nsem a wo kana utim say eto asomu yenkonko tie nsem papa yi ede to dwamra sisia.
The thing is this, it's easy just to go and criticize the budget, right? But to assess that budget properly, you got to ask yourself, what are the true constraints that this ministry is facing?
Right.
What is the real scenario?
Right.
And unfortunately, because there's all this politics, partisanship, every thrown in, sometimes the discussion gets a bit muddied. What I'm just trying to do today is to say, let's break down the scenario. Where are we? Right? And what are the options? Because sometimes you take a decision not because maybe it's an issue of survival. Sometimes you take a decision and you say, I can get away with this.
Right.
What is the situation?
What is the situation? Well, I can't wait. So I've given the green light now. Please shoot.
Okay. So I'll shoot. Right? Let's put this in context.
Right.
Listen to your finance minister. He says, we are under no illusions as to the economic challenges facing our country today. How to ease the suffering of Ghanaians, transform the economy to create jobs, and share the expected wealth across all households are what keeps the president awake at night.
Right.
To broaden the revenue base, keep a grip on expenditure, protect the public purse, and at the same time build with urgency the needed infrastructure, pay the bills, and stimulate economic activity. In this one statement, the minister was being truthful. No politics. He's just telling you what the issues are. And then let's move forward, right? What is the state of our economy today? I can tell you this. First of all, we are broke.
We're broke.
We are broke. There's no other way of dicing, slicing it, and I'll show you why we are broke. Secondly, listen. We raise too little tax revenue.
Right.
And it's obvious. Thirdly, we are over borrowed. It's a weight on our anklets. We can't do anything about it. Finally, we're unable to create jobs. And one consistent argument you've heard this morning is that if you implement this tax, we're going to lose jobs. So listen, I'll just go quickly through this. First of all, Ghana is broke.
Okay.
You see, when we say Ghana is broke, guys, it's not a political statement. It is not a partisan statement. It is the truth. And I'm quoting from the minister's budget statement. He says the total revenue and grants we earned as a country, 37.5 billion. Right? Our total expenditure that we plan to have, 70.32 billion. The deficit is 32 1.87 billion. What would you call someone who earns 1,000 cedis?
Yes, and yes, and the next
earns 1,000 cedis a month and spends 1,880 cedis.
You're broke. You're in deficit.
You're so broke that your situation is, we can't start to talk about it. And you see, that's so when we say you're broke, it's just the fact, these are just the numbers from the budget. These are not my numbers. These are the minister's numbers. When we say we are broke, look at this. And that's the terrible part. How much money we earn? 37.45 billion.
Right.
Interest payments. This is this year. This is up to September this year. Interest payments to date, 18.383 billion. Salaries to date, to September, 20.45 billion. When you take interest and salaries, we've already spent all our money. Education, health, roads, add the rest. This is why we say we are broke. And so before we even start to say, is this good, is this bad, let's realize that as a country, the depths of which we are broke. This is not to say who is responsible and whether, and I won't dare say that this is not an effect that started today. We've been crying about this for years. But the part that should worry us is that each iteration, it gets worse.
Right.
Each iteration, it gets worse. Now, some of it is the effect of our misdeeds in the past. But it seems like when you're in a hole, what do? You stop digging. Unfortunately, we haven't stopped digging. Because the partisan nature of our politics means that we can't say that things are bad. And the opposition is also hitting at us without a consideration for what is the real scenario.
Right.
Let's go on. So, what do we say? We raise too little tax revenue. And this is a very revealing graph. In blue is Ghana. In brown is the African average.
Right.
We're not talking about, go and talk about the US, go and talk about the Scandinavian countries. No, let's compare ourselves to our brothers. Right? Consistently, what do you see? Ghana collects less tax than the average. Now, let me scare you. This is 2018, 13.1%. Currently, we are heading at 12.1%.
And you're talking tax to our GDP?
Tax to our GDP.
Right.
How much tax we collect
as a percentage of
the wealth of this country in a year. Right? And it is bad. We don't collect enough tax. So part of being broke is simply that we are not taxing people enough. And part of the issue is that we are just ridiculous on this issue. This is the graph of everybody. Well, Ghana is the one in green. And since we dropped to 12.1, we are at the very bottom of the scale. I mean, listen, look at some of the countries. Togo, 19.4%. Ghana, where are we? Burkina Faso, 16.8%. Ghana, where are we? Mali is better than us. What do we think we're doing? These are countries that don't consider themselves a middle-income country, but are doing better at collecting taxes and using the taxes better than we've ever. So here's our problem. We don't collect enough. And when we collect, we don't use it well.
You mean we're profligating the way we spend?
Thank you.
Right.
So listen, we are broke, we are over-borrowed, right? And this is a hard part. This is our public debt. I won't go too far, because if you go too far, it kind of confuses the issue. Look at the numbers. Here we are. Good. Let's look at this. What does this tell us? You see how our public debt is increasing. 2.18, 2.91, and this is in billions of cedis. You see what is happening to the debt to GDP ratio. And here again, I'm using the government's own numbers. Let's not, I mean, we could argue on whether these numbers are right, whether they include everything. No, let's use the numbers that were given to us on Wednesday when the budget was given.
Right.
Look at the numbers. Now you see what's happening. The amount of money that we spend just to pay interest on our debt has been going up steadily, and now we've reached 50%.
Is it 50.3%?
Yes. What should worry us is not the debt to GDP ratio. To be honest, there are lots of other countries that have higher debt to GDP ratios. It's not really a big deal. If today I go and take a mortgage on a house, that mortgage on that house will be many times my annual salary. That's not the problem. But if the repayments, you give me 15 years, such that each month I'm paying only a small part of my salary, 15 years, I'm cool.
Right.
But if I take a loan, and you say that loan should be repaid in 5 years for a house, and it's taking 50% of my salary, then I have a problem. Because how am I going to live on the others? And that's where we sit. And that's what should worry us. Not the debt to GDP ratio. And truly, there's a lot of... It says, Charlie, Ghana, how much of your money that you earn do you spend paying interest? It shows you are broke. It shows also that you can't borrow any more. Now, let's look at something. And this is critical because it tells us something. It tells us a very important part of the process. I'm comparing us to other countries. Look, debt to GDP, 107% US, but they spend only 11% on
debt servicing.
Now, Lebanon is important. I want you to look at Lebanon. They spend 49% of their income in debt, right? Guess what happened to Lebanon? Disaster. Are we headed for Lebanon? If we don't pay our debts, let me tell you what will happen. The government will crash. They will lay off staff. If the payroll is full now, guess what will happen if we are not able to pay our debt? Right? The currency will crash. And I'm looking at what happened at Lebanon. And standards of living will diminish. Why is this important? It's important to say that we are between a rock and a really hard place. That this is the nightmare we are facing if we don't raise more revenue. Yet at the same time, the first thing I told you was that we are broke. And that if we don't borrow, we can't even continue to exist.
That's how bad it is.
That is how bad it is. And yet we are saying that if we don't raise taxes so that we can, this is the nightmare that can come. So you see, I can only evaluate this budget against this nightmare. I can't, to be honest, I hear you, sir, and I share your pain. And listen, I am in pain too. Come and talk to me about Dalex. We do more transactions than anybody else.
Right.
Yesterday I was in a meeting the whole day. My head was so full, we ended the meeting. I didn't know how I'm going to deal with this an additional 1.75% on my cost. So I identify with his pain. But I ask myself, this is the nightmare. And so this changes everything. And guess what?
Mr. Joe Jackson, you're now talking about debt servicing as a percentage of the revenue that we're collecting. What do we need to know about that as well?
Listen, we're spending 50% of our revenue to service our debt. That's terrible. Now, what we must be doing is asking ourselves, how do we make sure that ratio drops? That ratio has to drop. It can't stay the same. So if you think about it, heading into this budget, all that was on the minister's mind, despite the rhetoric, is that, how am I going to raise more revenue? Otherwise, this country is going to grind to a halt. It will grind to a halt because those who lend us money know these numbers. They do the analysis. And if we don't raise more money, they won't even lend us. If they don't lend us, this country will grind to a halt. And if we default, Lebanon is where you should be looking at. So you see that the situation was not funny. As for not being able to create jobs, it's the reality we face each and every day. When you see a queue of people lined up to go for a prison's interview or a police interview, sitting in the sun, running around, that's the reality. In fact, again, I'll quote, let's quote the own minister's words. He says 6 million people will join the labor force within the next 2 years.
That's
6
scary.
million.
That's scary.
That is scary. And he says 9 million jobs in Ghana would require digital skills before 2030. This is his own words. Wednesday. So, guys, let's not be confused. You have to look at that levy in the light of this reality. And it's easy to listen. The levy has so many problems we haven't started talking about.
Right, we'll get there.
Right? But he has to raise revenue. One of my challenges is that even in this budget, we are still not taxing the wealthy enough. We're still not taxing the rich enough. And so, and that's because the very people we are asking on both sides of the divide to do the work are those who are going to be affected. And let's be clear. In this country, having a TIN number has always been part of registering a piece of land or a company.
Right.
But who says to you that how can you register this land worth 20,000?
Abusuafo anoden according to the papai kikan de na je say levy no any tax ho nsensem no se Ghana for any me beye adwene de ane se wo se yinyina akimi gitum na yetimi tua koso tie nsem a oye fada yi ede atoto ho ama Ghana for a utim se ba bia yegina no yegina akono a se ya ma ye ni anye den a nsem bebre ene beto ye na me wasem kakra mbese me ka kire ye president ene ye MPs ene mpanyimfo a omudi oman no so no ma disrede kakra mbese me to omanim enie me ameti hei menye economist ana me ameti menye politician ba se me si dan wo Ghana kra na me check ma ho odin na me hunu se mintimi enkodan no ho gidigidi a mitimi ton me bibi kra e de koye sa de ko ni hia me a mitimi ton de koye sa de ko no ade na moma yen kate ye expenses ewo how aban no anytime any offense omo politician parliamentarians no spendings no more no mo miente so say the be ya ho kire no enko mebirebe saa because minim say parliamentarians no omo ntua light water eno mo mebire ho omo ntua from me start ye tua me sure say nkan so betimi aboa say bia mo salary na omo sika de be mo no mo pay no na nko mo de bi atuatua saa petrol ni saa no ma no nko say mo na petrol nko mo nje oji ano de kia yi no code na mo bi no bi so de bu e wo nchen wo baabi any saa no money electricity ntika mmetimi ama yakati ye coat according to your size we are sure senka pressure we na abeto ho amo ka kire Ghana for no ke betimi ateni oma so kakra na V8 ahodo akese a muchi no mumpe ho bibi nya monye we are sure say ekwan na enye ni ntina mu twitwi ka sakese no ekwan ne papa ka metwi nketwa instead say mbeto ka sakese de nam kwan fon so no ene nka nyame beboa na say metie me dia nka mumma cars no akese ka tire ba akokora no munyina mo ka mo tire ba akobomu a cars even as 275 MPs amo parliament mo ties na egu cars na se no eno kura timi ye kwan bi e wokuro bi so eti kamu mpa kwan bi amefa so akate mu coat according to mo size na eye pressure ya abeto ho ya papa yi e kan mi yam kura hyeme na etimi ama asomdwe nso aba na Ghana fo nso ate ase na tax no omo so a omo ye adwuma omo timi koba bebi kakra omo nsem no omo so atimi atua na ama oman no atimi akonanim me ma ginchire ni nso betimi de nso agyenchire aba e wo video na se me didi ekuonaba boaten